That's what we're talking about. How far does the CRTC go with Global Live, with this decision? They weren't directly involved in the whole money for nothing fiasco, but even chiming in on that, where does the CRTC really fit in as far as respecting consumers and looking out for the best interest of consumers? We don't see that.
Okay, James, tell me, I mean, if you were a conservative, which is the truly genuine, more conservative position on this one? The one enunciated by Coyne or by Clement?
I would say Andrew Coyne actually had it right on this one in terms of if you're looking for a clear free market alternative to what's going on, then the alternative is to open up the market in general, allow for foreign investment to come in this area, and that will stimulate the kind of competition that you really need to do things like lower prices. What we're looking at right now is an artificially created competition because all of the smaller internet service providers are all creatures of the CRTC regulation. The CRTC regulation is what allows them to survive. So at the whims of a government or of the CRTC, they can come and go and their business models can be adversely affected. If we were to open it up and have free and open competition and push forward in that way, then you'd actually see a realistic pricing structure. So it kind of sounds like you're talking to a kooky bunch of conservatives, if that's what they're pushing for.
Let me find out what Mirko thinks on this. The notion, as Andrew Coyne said, of just opening it all up, international competition as well. How would Bell view that?
Well, that's a big topic. I think one of the issues with the foreign ownership issue is that, of course, what's been under debate in the last year or year and a half on foreign ownership is to potentially lift the foreign ownership rules only on the telecom side. But of course, we now operate in an integrated communications market where telecom and broadcasting is offered over the same networks, over the same pipes, so to speak. And you know, how do you lift foreign ownership rules on telecom but not touch broadcasting? And then there's a whole cultural issue that gets brought into the broadcasting debate. It's very complex. So I mean, that's what the government's got to grapple with. On the UBB issue in particular, though, what I would point out is, you know, this, and again, it's a narrow issue of whether or not UBB is an appropriate pricing principle for a small segment of the wholesale market. That's what the issue is. And on that issue, the CRTC had involved due process. It was a 2-year process where they took in submissions from every interested stakeholder and arrived at a considered decision. Now, of course, people can reasonably disagree with the CRTC decision, and that's fine. And there is an ability to appeal to the federal government. But if that's going to be the case, then due process ought to be followed there as well, and people ought to be given an opportunity to provide their fully considered views before a decision is made. So I think I would, on that issue, I would just say that ultimately, you know, whatever happens, there needs to be due process, and I think that's what's going to happen now with the CRTC taking the issue back.
Let me ask the two ISP guys here today. George, have you guys met with Tony Clement? I mean, he seems to be on your side on this one. Have you had a meeting with him?
We have not met with him.
You've not met with him?
No.
Mirko, has Bell Canada had a meeting with Tony Clement on this?
No, we have not.
Have you sought one?
We did.
And?
We have not had a meeting yet.
Is he declining to meet with you?
Well, I'll just leave it at, you know, again, there's due process. The CRTC is looking at it. So right now we're going to put our arguments forward in the CRTC arena. And that's what that was. You know, Mr. von Finkenstein, the chairman, decided to look at it again, and we're going to make our best arguments there. Okay,
here's where I go to James, because this is not the first time the Harper government has overruled the CRTC. It's actually not the first time any government has overruled the CRTC on some issue related to, you know, broadcasting or telecom or ISPs, that kind of thing. The Global Live decision is out there. The VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol decision, is out there as well. Look down the road for us. What do you think the long-term consequences of CRTC decisions, you know, on what seems to be a relatively, you know, frequent basis now, being turned over by the government of the day?
It's uncertainty, and that's the worst thing you can have in any market, is to have these people coming forward and changing decisions and no business knowing at any given moment what rules it's actually playing by. If either the CRTC or the government of the day can flip things over, change things around, and we've got this ping-ponging effect going back and forth right now between the two sides. It's uncertainty. I think what this points to is that we need to open it up to a bigger, more difficult debate in terms of what our telecom policy is going to be going forward, because I think everybody can agree, regardless of what your view on UBB is right now, that the system as a whole isn't working, and nobody's sure what the rules are.
Should we get rid of the CRTC altogether in this day and age? Does it serve a function anymore?
I think we need to know exactly what that function is, and that's the role of the government to define. And rather than making ad hoc one-off decisions, announcing policy positions on Twitter, and I give Mr. Clement a lot of credit for being available on Twitter and chatting, but perhaps that's not the best forum for public debate. The best place for public debate is in the House of Commons, and we haven't had this debate in the House of Commons yet.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there. The House of Commons is a great place to have a public debate. I don't disagree with you there. But gosh, don't say anything that's going to make them stop tweeting and being more accessible and kind of. Anyway, that's an aside.
Well, and I also think that there's some kind of value to that too. That Clement is available, and it speaks again to consumers and speaking in the best interest of consumers. He's broadcasting this decision or an opinion on Twitter. Fine. But what it ultimately boils down to, and you asked a very interesting question, should the CRTC be abolished? I don't think it needs to be abolished. I think that there needs to be a serious discussion on reform, because I do think the CRTC serves somewhere down the line a real, serious, good purpose.
Okay, John, I'm going to chime in here because we got a few minutes left, and I've got a couple more things I want to tackle. How much? 4 minutes left. Thank you. Michael, do me a favor, bring that one up again, okay? There was that comment that we got from, this is Kingston student via the live chat. So you should ask the question on the cap discrepancy. Mirko, I'm going to ask you this question. He says it's 25 gigabytes in Ontario and 60 gigabytes in Quebec. Why the discrepancy on the cap? Can you help us with that?
Well, hold on. We have a number of packages in both Ontario and Quebec. So we have a 25 gigabyte package, 50 and 75. And in Quebec, I think it ranges from 25 or 50 all the way up to 100. So in Ontario or in Quebec, there are plans there for the light, the medium, and the heavy user. Now, of course, we operate in both provinces, and we face a multiple number of competitors. In Ontario, we face competition from Rogers and Cogeco, two major cable companies, the Teksavvys and other third-party wholesale ISPs like that, and a number of wireless providers. And by the way, today, wireless is a very robust alternative for broadband or internet services. In Quebec, we face a different set of competitors. We have Videotron. Everybody knows Videotron, a very formidable cable company. We have Cogeco, also a big cable company.
Okay, so there are different
we
market
have to react to the different
provinces.
marketplace. Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
Okay, I get that. All right, let's do one last thing here, because literally down to our last couple of minutes. More than 420,000 people have signed the quote-unquote Stop the Metered Internet petition. This is online. Even though, as we've already discovered here today, there are going to be relatively few Canadians, who are going to be affected by this decision. I want to know, James, whether or not you think a lot of this foofara is just because, for the longest time, it's kind of been fashionable not to like Rogers and not to like Bell.
I think it's a little bit of that, and I think it is, regardless of who your provider is, you look at your bill at the end of the month, and particularly with bundling services where you've now got your cable, your television, your telephone all coming in on the same bill, there is a sticker shock effect. And I think the debate over UBB is people wanting to get action on that sticker shock. It might be misplaced in terms of the best way of solving that problem. But yeah, certainly it is a consumer's reaction to the pricing.
George, can I get you on that one? It's just, there's long-time antipathy to Rogers and Bell for a whole bunch of reasons. Do you think that's part of this drama?
Well, I think that the discrepancy between what they want to charge for incremental gigabytes and the actual cost of it makes the public feel like they're getting mugged. I also think that the public is getting increasingly concerned about this remarkable concentration among very few companies of not just the content delivery systems, but also content itself. So you can't look at this in isolation from Bell acquiring CTV or Shaw acquiring CanWest and so on. Because of this, Bell has a very, very strong interest in trying to keep us away from the internet. Because from the internet, we get Netflix. And on Netflix, you get all-you-can-eat movies for $7 a month, whereas you have to go on Bell to get a VOD movie download for $9 a movie, $8 a movie, $7 a movie.
Okay, let me leave Mirko to the last 20 seconds to respond to that.
Well, I'd like to respond to the Stop the Meter campaign, Steve. I just urge everyone to look at the question. Of course, the question is loaded. It says basically the equivalent of, CRTC is going to force you to pay more. Are you in support of that? Well, of course, people are going to say, no, we're not in support, but that's not really the issue. That's not what the CRTC is doing at all. I'm sure if I were to ask the question, are you prepared to pay more to subsidize the heaviest users on the internet? I'm sure people would say no to that too.
Gotcha. Okay. Mirko Bibic, thanks so much for being there for us tonight in Ottawa on the line representing Bell Canada. Appreciate you coming into our studios in the nation's capital tonight. Here in the studio, George Berger from Teksavvy, James Cowan from Canadian Business, Donald Blair, the IT and political consultant. Good of all you gentlemen to join us here in Toronto as well. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.